A young black woman stood motionless in her own driveway, accused of stealing the car she had worked her whole life to earn. 3 men circled her, their fists raised, certain that people like her do not deserve such luxury. But what they didn't know was that she wasn't just a nobody. She was a ruthless military fighter. The music faded, replaced by the chilling silence of a tense neighborhood. Where the hell do you think you're going with that car? Dean's voice, rough as sandpaper, sliced through the quiet of Maplewood Lane. He stood with his 2 friends, Kyle and Mark, at the end of the brick-lined driveway, blocking the street. A brilliant yellow Lamborghini gleamed behind her in the afternoon sun, a car that screamed wealth, power, and untouchable status. But to these men, the picture didn't add up. The tallest one, Dean, stepped forward. His jaw was tight, and his fists were clenched. He leaned close, shouting in her face as if she were deaf or stupid. "You don't belong here. Don't you dare touch that car again. We know it ain't yours." The young woman, Tessa Vance, stood still, her dark eyes locked on him with a cold calmness that was unnerving. Her posture never shifted. She didn't flinch, didn't back away. Her silence only made Dean angrier, as if she were mocking him without saying a word. Behind him, his crew hovered like shadows. They weren't saying much yet, but their folded arms and scowls told the story. They wanted trouble. The street was quiet except for a nervous neighbor peeking from behind her blinds across the street, but no one came outside. No one intervened. It was the same silence that always followed when black skin met white rage in broad daylight. Tessa's voice finally cut the air, steady, low, and deadly calm. "Move." Dean smirked, then laughed, throwing his head back. "Oh, that's cute. You think you can just stroll in here and order me around?" He leaned closer, pointing a finger almost into her face. "Listen up, sweetheart. Around here, we don't take too kindly to thieves." Kyle chimed in, his voice dripping with mockery. "Yeah, I bet she saw the car parked out here and thought she'd boost it. You know how they do." The words hung heavy. Tessa's jaw flexed, but she didn't break her stare. Dean circled her slowly like a wolf. "Tell you what, why don't you explain to me real slow whose car this is? 'Cause unless you got a rich sugar daddy hiding inside that house, I know damn well you didn't buy it." The insult twisted the knife, but Tessa didn't rise to the bait. She didn't need to, because in her chest burned a patience that only comes from battlefields far from home. A flashback, just a flicker, desert heat, screams in the distance, the sound of mortar shells raining down. Tessa in a combat uniform, dirt smeared across her face, barking orders with ice in her veins. Men twice her size obeying without question, her eyes scanning horizon for threats. She had lived through hell and carried the scars, invisible to these fools. Back in the driveway, Dean shoved a finger hard against her shoulder. "I said, answer me, girl." Tessa didn't move. Her stillness was unnerving, the kind you only see in people who've been through storms others can't even imagine. "Maybe she's mute," Mark said with a chuckle, "or maybe she's just too dumb to realize who she's talking to." Dean's grin twisted darker. "You think you can stand here acting all high and mighty with that smug face? You're in my neighborhood. That car ain't yours. People like you don't drive cars like that." There it was, the cut, the bone-deep truth of his words. People like you. Tessa had heard it all before. In school, on the streets, in boardrooms, in airports. Every shade of dismissal, every sneer, every microaggression, until words piled high like bricks stacked on her back. But she didn't bow. Not then, not now. She glanced at the Lamborghini behind her, sunlight bouncing off the flawless yellow paint. The car wasn't just metal. It was proof of every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every grueling deployment. Proof that she had clawed her way through blood and fire and came back alive. And these boys, these small, angry men, thought they could strip her of that with a sneer. Dean raised his fist suddenly, stepping so close his breath hit her face. "Tell me whose car this is before I make you regret standing here." Tessa's lips parted just enough for her words to slip through. "You touch me, and you'll regret it for the rest of your life." Kyle barked a laugh. "Oh, this is rich. You think you're some kind of fighter? What you gonna do? Scream for help?" "Yeah," Mark added, his voice dripping with condescension. "Ain't nobody coming out here for you. Folks around here know better." Dean, his fists clenched even tighter, tried to psych himself up. "Nah, see, I don't like that look in her eyes, like she's better than us. I think she needs a reminder of where she stands." The three men closed in, circling her. Dean feigned a swing. Kyle cracked his knuckles, stepping closer to her left. Mark shifted to block her right, cutting off any escape. From across the street, the neighbor kept watching, phone in hand, but not dialing, just recording another show for the internet. Tessa stood still as a stone, letting the tension coil tighter, letting them think they had her boxed in. Her breathing slowed, her eyes sharpened, every detail locked in her mind. The distance between them, the way Dean favors right side, the weight distribution in Mark's stance, the hesitation in Kyle's eyes. They had no idea. "You know what's crazy?" Dean said, leaning close again, a smirk on his face. "You're not even scared." Tessa's voice was as steady as granite. "Because I've faced men with more power than you, and I buried them." For a split second, Dean froze. Kyle frowned. Mark blinked. The words didn't sound like a bluff. They sounded like the truth. But Dean shook it off, puffing up his chest. "Nah, now you're just mouthing off. Time to shut you up." He shoved her shoulder hard this time, and that's when something shifted in the air. Tessa's hand shot up so fast the eye could barely catch it. She snatched Dean's wrist mid-push, twisted, and in one seamless move had him bent forward, his face inches from the hood of the Lamborghini. His scream split the air as his arm locked in a painful joint hold. Kyle lunged forward, furious. But before his hands reached her, Tessa pivoted, dragging Dean like a shield, and drove her boot into Kyle's chest. He stumbled back, gasping. Mark swung wildly, but she ducked low, swept his legs, and sent him crashing onto the pavement. The fight was over in seconds. Now Dean was face down, screaming. Kyle clutched his ribs. Mark groaned on the ground, blinking stars. The quiet street wasn't quiet anymore. Neighbors were at their windows, some filming, some whispering in disbelief. And Tessa, she was standing tall, calm and untouched. She tightened her grip on Dean's arm just enough to make him cry out again, then leaned close, whispering in his ear so only he could hear. "You picked the wrong woman." But this was only the beginning, because what none of them knew, what not a single one of them suspected, was who she really was. And when that truth came out, this quiet driveway would become a battlefield none of them would ever forget. The flashing blue and red lights appeared at the end of the cul-de-sac. A black and white police cruiser rolled slowly to a stop. Two officers stepped out. One of them, Officer Hennon, squinted at the scene. Three men, beaten and disheveled on the driveway, and a black woman standing tall and composed in front of a luxury car. He frowned, his hand instinctively resting on his hip. "Ma'am, is there a problem here?" he asked, his voice already carrying a note of suspicion. Dean, seeing a lifeline, jumped at it, stumbling forward. "Yeah, there's a problem. She attacked us out of nowhere. Look at what she did." He pointed to his bruised arm and to Mark groaning on the ground. "We were just asking questions about the car, and she went crazy." Tessa didn't move, didn't flinch. She just reached into her pocket and pulled out a small black leather case. She flipped it open. The gold gleam of a U.S. Marine Corps insignia shone against the afternoon light. Her military ID sat beside it, her name etched clearly, Staff Sergeant Tessa Vance. The card listed her as a decorated Marine veteran, with tours in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. The silence that followed was deafening. Dean's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Kyle's fists fell to his sides. Mark just stared, his face pale as if the ground had been yanked from under him. The other officer, Martinez, leaned in, reading the ID. "Staff Sergeant," he said respectfully, handing it back. "Do you want to press charges?" The color drained from Dean's face. Kyle stammered. "Wait, what?" Mark whispered. No, don't do that." Tessa studied them for a long, cold second. Their arrogance was gone. All that swagger, all that mockery, melted into fear. Finally, she shook her head. "No, not today." The officers exchanged a look. Martinez nodded, understanding. We'll make a note of the incident, ma'am. We suggest you gentlemen leave now. As the officers turned back toward the cruiser, Dean hissed under his breath, You think you're better than us, don't you? Tessa stepped closer, so close he had to crane his neck to look up at her. Her voice was a whisper, but it carried louder than any shout. I don't think. I know. The police left. The neighbors scattered back into their homes, embarrassed they hadn't lifted a finger to help. Phones were shut off, curtains closed, but Dean, Kyle, and Mark remained on her driveway, their pride broken worse than their bruises. Here's what's going to happen, Tessa said, her voice calm and sharp as glass. You're going to leave. You're going to take that hate and your small little world and keep it as far from me as possible, because the next time you step foot on my property, she let the sentence hang, her eyes burning into them, you won't walk away. The three men backed off slowly, shame and rage fighting for space on their faces. None of them had a comeback. None of them could undo what had just been burned into everyone's memory. When they finally disappeared down the street, Tessa stood alone in her driveway, the Lamborghini gleaming behind her. The adrenaline faded. The silence returned. But this time, it wasn't the silence of defeat. It was the silence of victory. She walked to the hood of the car and placed a hand on the metal. For a moment, her reflection stared back at her. A black woman, young but battle-worn, quiet but unbreakable. A woman who carried generations of struggle in her skin and refused to let anyone write her story for her. She whispered softly to herself words that weren't for Dean or Kyle or Mark, but for every person who had ever doubted her. They'll never understand what it cost, and they'll never take it away. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A message from her younger cousin, Malik. How's the new car, cuz? Tessa typed back one word. Earned. She slid the phone away, leaned against a Lamborghini, and let the weight of the moment wash over her. Tessa gazed down the empty street, her voice low but steady, speaking to no one and everyone at once. They judge me by my skin, but they'll remember me by my strength. And with that, she turned, opened the door of her car, and drove away, leaving silence, shame, and a legacy behind her.